Hello, welcome everyone. This is the Granite Mountain Movie Club. I'm your host. I go by Granite. We're going to be talking today about possibly the biggest movie of 2023, which is Barbie, directed by Greta Gerwig. You've probably seen Barbie at this point or heard a lot about it. And today I am joined by Degree Studies,
Hello, hello.
Arturo.
Hi there.
So we've got back the the Cake Boy crew from the from the Clueless episode, which if you haven't listened to, definitely go listen to our Clueless discussion from about a month or two ago. And then we have a first time guest, California's favorite son, Golden Boy.
Hello, hello. And I gotta say, I do wish I was a cake boy.
Yeah, I think you're more of a meat boy at this point.
I mean, there's a pretty surefire way to become a cake boy, from what I understand.
I'll go watch Clueless again real quick. I don't remember.
So Barbie. Well, is there anything anyone wants to get into before we get into Barbie? There's plenty to talk about, but how are you guys doing?
I'm good. I was like you. I was just trying to sort of refresh myself on the movie today because I guess it's been like a couple weeks since we saw it.
Yeah, Degree Studies and I saw it on opening day at one of those movie theaters that also is like a restaurant, and we sat next to two other guys, so there's 4 guys in a row, and I wasn't sure what to make of those guys initially, really, and we talked to them a bit, and I thought they were kind of at first I thought they were seeing it to be ironic, or like. I don't know exactly, but they're just like, no, we're just here to support Ryan Gosling.
Well, they did say, I think, that they were Barbenheimering as well. So they were completing the circuit as we were.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the target audience of Barbie, I guess, is just cool guys.
For sure.
All right, yeah, and then Arturo, you just saw it like yesterday, right?
Yeah. I didn't want to see it at the start. I wasn't a sheep like you guys, buying into the meme, getting memed to giving them your money. But yesterday, Degree reached out to me. He was like, "Hey, we're recording tomorrow," and I was like, "Well, I guess I'll bite the bullet and see it." I managed to get in on $5 Tuesday. Didn't even know that was a thing, but I saw it. And saw it last night, in the theater. I walked into the theater like 2 minutes before it started. It was very satisfying. But I was very thirsty and I didn't want to miss anything, so I sat through the entire movie without a beverage. That part was painful, but other than that, the movie's still pretty fresh in my mind, so I'm glad about that.
Yeah, that's the right way to see it, I think, with an intense thirst. And Golden Boy, did you see it back kind of when it came out?
Yeah. I had a group of friends going, so I just went with them. And
did you see it with women? Did they connect with it?
I was going to bring this up, I'm sure we'll get into the messaging of the movie because I frankly found it like kind of confusing, and but like some of the girls I know like really connected with it, and some of them just thought it was stupid, and I can never tell. Like it's surprising to me who thought what, and so I don't know. It's kind of a grab bag there, but
yeah. Well, I'll jump into it and I'll go first and say I'll give my quick review on it. I think it's I thought it was all right up until a point, and I'll say what that point was in a second. But I thought for most of it, it was kind of funny. I thought a lot of the jokes were. I thought there was a lot of timing issues, jokes that just seemed to go on too long, or they'd repeat them, or didn't quite land. The timing seemed a little bit off, but they were all right. I thought some of the musical stuff worked. I think Gosling was really, really good. He was really pretty funny. But then the movie, and where I think it falls apart is when they get back to Barbie Land, which has been, becomes Ken Land. The whole thing just sort of falls apart. It just stops making any sort of sense. There's, and and we'll get into this thing because there's this thing where people say, oh, it's a movie about toys and it's for kids, so you're not allowed to actually critique it. Like you're an idiot if you critique it. But I don't go in for that, and I'll talk about that why later. Um, but yeah, the final third of the movie just doesn't really make any sense, and it's like feels like it's tripping over itself. So I felt ultimately it was kind of a failure of as a movie, kind of a failure. I mean, commercially, it's obviously anything but a failure, but that's my sort of initial take.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I agree with that, and I think it's funny because like a big gag in the movie is like them making fun of guys being too into like The Godfather or something, and so it's almost like this movie would make fun of us for us critiquing it for actually not making sense. Like a lot of the plot devices in the third part, like it all hinges on like a feminist lecture and stuff, and it just like it doesn't really like track. It just doesn't make any sense, and then these people are there for no reason. But I think they would make fun of us for critiquing that, which is
Yeah, and yeah,
That should be the name of this pod: mansplaining about Barbie.
yeah,
yeah, I'll probably do that. And that's one of those things. It's like Jon Stewart always did this on the Daily Show. That was his big thing, where he felt like he could say whatever, and he was absolutely influencing the way that his audience saw the world and like understood the news. And then, but if you ever critiqued him, he'd just say, what was that thing? I think he said it to like Tucker Carlson. He's like, oh, I'm followed by a show called Crank Yankers, where puppets do prank phone calls. He's like, this is a joke, and like you can't ever hold me accountable for what I say. That's like, I feel like they're using the same maneuver with this one. I don't know so much if like Greta Gerwig is doing that, but the fans, the stands online are doing that.
Well, I feel like that's very true to life, where like if a woman gets into an argument with you and you win, let's say, or like you just have the better of the argument, like often the final word from her will be like, well, the fact that you even like care enough to defeat me like means you're a loser, and like probably a sexless loser. And I think it works better in real life than when you're making an art product, because when you make an art product, like implicitly you think you have something to say.
Yeah, and like it's kind of in dumb media, in like stupid things. That's where like a lot of people's cultural like downloading of cultural ideas occurs. It's not like some people might be going to some art house movie and getting their ideas about the world, but very few people are doing that. It's like through mass entertainment that people are getting like these jokey notions about the way the patriarchy exists or something.
Yeah, and I actually think that sort of leads into my overall take on the movie, which was, right after we saw it, I think I enjoyed it like as a movie, as an entertainment experience. I had a good time sitting through it. I think mainly because of Gosling, but you know, there were like immediately, the discourse response to the movie was like a lot of people just celebrating it as a fun movie, and then sort of like the Michael Knowles take that like this movie's secretly based. And I think that I knew I didn't really agree with either of those. And I think the take I settled on, I think I first heard it from Nightmare Vision, but a few other people have said this, which is that like as a piece of propaganda, which I think is what it sort of means to be, it's so incoherent and self-contradictory that it like ceases to be threatening. And I think in a weird way that might also be why it is connecting with a lot of young women, because I think like the status of like feminism writ large in 2023 is like very a la carte, and no one feels obliged to have a consistent worldview about what gender roles should be or what standards each gender should be held to. And so a movie that's just like very all over the place and sort of like, at times celebrates, traditional beauty, but then has a big emphasis on like independence and seems to go away from sexuality entirely. And, it's just all over the place. And I think that's actually where a lot of the public, especially the female public, uh, is like in their own mind. They haven't settled these questions, so they might be sort of affirmed to see something that's just as confused as their own
Yeah,
take. But I do think, like, because it was a little bit silly as a piece of propaganda, it didn't like bother me that much, and I could just sort of take it as like an amusing little spectacle. And I think it was that. I think it was amusing.
yeah, I think that makes sense. That previous, there's these like previous iterations of feminism in waves. Third, second, and first wave feminism, and like maybe at that when those things were happening, at the academy or whatever, maybe some of the young women who were like adopting those ideas actually tried to like have some sort of discipline around what the ideas were. But yeah, now it's like the movie is just as confused about feminism, I guess, as the modern viewer would be, like having really no coherent concept of it for themselves.
Yeah, and also just like seemingly on screen, like even conceding, like we can get into this later, but it seems like the movie conceded that its vision of female self-actualization might preclude any kind of enduring affection between the genders, but then just decides to sort of like punt on that question. Like, oh, like Ken will do what he wants and Barbie will do what he wants, and like, how will the next generation be created? Like, we don't know. We don't really consider that our responsibility.
Very true to life in that way. One thing
Yeah.
that to kind of I remember when the Daily Show was a big thing, you would hear people say like, "Oh, more young people get their news from the Daily Show than from the actual news." And I remember I had this substitute teacher my freshman year of high school. Like that idea like really pissed her off, and I thought she was kind of overdoing it at the time, but I can sort of see where she was coming from now, because it's true that people don't kind of intuitively or maybe even explicitly grasp that there is no the world is such a jumbled up and ultimately I guess unserious place that having a sincere and principled stance on not just feminism or gender relations or whatever, but on anything is sort of, well, for one thing, you don't need to have it. We are the kind of material uh, safety and uh, of people is pretty safe. So most of the things that people like believe are no more than just kind of things that they say, or like what is it, like luxury beliefs or signifiers that they put on. So there is no pressure to have a coherent worldview. You can just kind of take things a la carte or as the vibe strikes you. And I think in that sense, this is a good, a very fitting piece of propaganda for what for what Moldbug kind of accurately describes as an extremely ironic age. Anything, no matter what the stance of it was, if it was too serious, it would just kind of turn people off on that basis alone. So being ironic and jokey, I think, does make it a very something that I enjoyed it a lot, even as I did kind of intellectually was sort of repulsed by certain aspects of it, but it did kind of make the medicine go down smoother, and I think that's kind of how it would have to be.
When people want to talk about like, is it based, I just think about like who is the normal audience, and like what might they like, what are they most likely taking away from it. And I anticipate, and I noticed this at our screening, like some of the best laugh lines from the audience were like the really heavy-handed patriarchy jokes. And so I think a typical female viewer probably isn't even picking up on some of those, like the people who claim it's secretly based, they're not really picking up on any of that like secretly based stuff anyway. I think from it they're just taking the parts that are like, oh yeah, men, if you don't watch out, men will just try and take over your little Barbie land and ruin it, even though everyone's happier. But
No, I agree with that. I think I am a major offender of coming on this podcast and just in general arguing that everything is secretly based. But like, this movie is not secretly based. It's openly paused. And
well, I think there's room to. So
Right.
for some reason, I keep thinking about Blade Runner 2049, and maybe because Gosling's in there, and we've covered it on the podcast. But like, I have, my little reading, and I didn't invent this reading, but I kind of see that as like a natalist movie, or even maybe an anti-abortion movie. And it's not to say that like Denis intended that, but like I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna take that from it and say that like, oh, this is a good illustration of a thing I like. But I'm not gonna say like this is what they actually meant. Like, whereas that seems to be what a lot of the secretly based Barbie people are. They're like, oh no, Gerwig meant this. Gerwig, she was hiding clues for us.
Yeah, I listen. I'm sure a lot of people heard about this, but like the Michael Knowles infamous like this movie is secretly based. He gives like the creators a ton of credit, and like I have no doubt, Greta Gerwig is smart and talented, but he gives her a lot of credit for like this secret intelligence that she's passing on this like knowledge, and I just don't like that's not there at all. Like the movie is pretty like libtarded, where it's just like it doesn't actually make sense. A lot of this stuff is just like contrived or like a simple line, and that's kind of like the norm for today, right? Like that's how we've already said this. Like that's how people engage with the culture. And I think when a lot of times when like these kind of libtard artists, and I think we can say that in this case, like the movie's pretty explicitly political. Like whenever they touch on something that comes across as secretly based, it's just because they're engaging with like good storytelling that's like more reflective of nature, when we're so used to like the liberal artists like kind of denying nature. And so I don't think it's intentional at all. I just think like they kind of hit good story beats and it comes off that way, but it's not.
Right.
I think giving them credit is way too generous.
I think that's consistent with the incoherent reading, because it's saying like Gerwig is actually not enough of an intellectual to be aware when sort of like classic storytelling beats are conflicting with the exoteric message of the movie. So she just doesn't care. And she has no obligation to care. But I think, as you're sort of saying, Golden Boy, I think it's a misread to say like, oh, she's engaged in incredible subtlety. It's like, no, she wants to make a feminist movie. She's just sort of retarded. So it only like half worked.
And she's a millennial.
Yeah. And even at the end, like we talk about like Ken got, or it was something like, oh, they're successful on their own. Ken got his own ending that wasn't that sad. Like I don't think it was even that well thought out. I think the movie is about Barbie, and at the end, it's like, oh well, she can't end up with the guy. That wouldn't be very feminist. So we have to end it with Ken getting a minor redemption. Like I don't even think that part was that well thought out, personally.
Degree, it's funny that I think that the world is openly paused and secretly based, and so naturally it's understandable that you would see that in everything, right? Unintentionally we might say. And I think it's a very normie con thing. Some would say Q-pilled, for them to be like, actually the creators were secretly trying to make it based, like Patriots are in control of the Barbie script or whatever. Whereas like somebody like me, who I guess is kind of raised in a very like liberal and, dare I say, critically theoretical worldview, like I wouldn't need to ascribe any intent to the creators of these things to kind of see a meaning as reflective of, like you say, like nature, or like how I view the world, to see that reflected in everything that I would watch, or to understand how it would reflect the way that I make sense of the world, because that is a lot more intuitive to how I would think of it. So yeah, it's kind of absurd to ascribe whatever based even means, whatever. It's not Barbie, but it can be like the way that we, I don't know, take meaning from this.
I will say Ken was pretty based when he brought the patriarchy to Barbie Land. Like that was so cool. And it's one of those things, like they made it so like glamorous and cool. And I think it was like supposed to be dumb, but I like everyone I know just like loved that. And like that's the part of the aesthetic of the movie that's like I think is going to last more, is kind of like the stupid Cowboy Ken stuff.
Yeah, the Mojo Dojo,
exactly.
House, Kenland. Yeah, they don't. There's two main things. There's probably more than this, but there's two main things in my mind that the movie never resolves. They sort of like they tee them up as like points that they're making, but then they never they kind of like disprove them, or at least fail to prove them. So first there's the girl, the like little Latina girl who's angry, like I don't know what she is. She's just a Zoomer, I guess, but she's she gives this rant about how Barbie's fascist and bad, but then she's not proven right really at any point. Like they don't. I mean, she's actually just like wrong, I guess, but they don't. I don't know. They don't really handle that from there. And then the other bigger one is Ken taking over, and then everyone being happy, and they don't have a compelling reason as to why Barbie needs to regain the throne. They're just like, it's Barbie, she's it's hers or whatever, so she's going to get it back. But the people are obviously extremely happy under patriarchy.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not like they don't remember either. Like I think the President Barbie even says something like, "Oh, this was so much better than before." So it's like a weird brainwashing where like it's not like they forgot what Barbie Land was like. It's just that no, like this is more fun. Like this is better.
No, and I think that little turn would be like the best argument for the Knowles perspective, because I think any like committed feminist or a person who had actually been like, oh, I'm gonna make feminist art or whatever, would realize like you can't, if you're trying to show something as bad, you can't just show a bunch of people having a good time and then have your lead come in and explain why it's secretly wrong. Like, and
well, that's what they do in real life, so it makes sense.
no, that's true. But like, it's like isn't the most famous phrase in art like "show don't tell"? Like they could have had like 10 additional seconds where like one of the female characters is just like, oh, I like miss the fulfillment I used to get from my like vocation. But like it's very funny that they don't do that.
One of the other Barbies pulls, Margot Robbie aside, and she's like, "I'm actually really unhappy. I'm being, repeatedly gang raped or something like that."
Yeah, I'm sure they could have brought in Olivia Wilde for like a 1-page, script and just thrown in some ideas from "Don't Worry, Darling" or whatever.
I was gonna bring up "Don't Worry, Darling." I'm glad you did.
It's funny you said "show don't tell" because like the device in the movie that saves them is literally just them telling. Like it's just the lecture is the thing that saves Barbie Land.
You know,
yeah.
You know what that reminds me of is when people are arguing on the internet and they're like, I know that I'm supposed to oppose this, but I don't remember what I'm supposed to say. So can like one of you guys tell me what I'm supposed to say so I can win this argument? People will do that. Like of all like ideologies, people will always do that. They'll be like, or you'll see someone like, I'm not very good at explaining this, so I'm just gonna Google and see what I'm supposed to say. That's basically what it is. Like they don't even remember that they're supposed to dislike it, but then when they hear like the right phrases, suddenly they're reminded of and like the real that they're locked in some sort of false consciousness, and in that way, while it wasn't convincing at all, it was also kind of true to life. And most people don't really even remember why they dislike or like things.
That's like a curiously accurate, as I think as Golden Boy was saying, like it's a curiously accurate depiction of feminism where it's like some scold has to come in and sit you down and like explain to you why you're unhappy with your boyfriend. Because if they didn't give you that explicit programming, you would have just kept liking your boyfriend and being happy.
I'm coming back around on secretly based.
Well, yeah, that's definitely the section of the film with the most like, I just chalk it up to like artistic incompetence, but there are some I don't know what the word is, red flags or something.
Well, like I think part of it, and I remember this in another context about the movie, is that like if you were an extremely successful female or even male director, and this section of the movie is about how these women don't have their high glamorous jobs anymore. Of course, to you it's going to seem self-evident why they would want their glamorous jobs where they win Nobel prizes and shit back. Whereas to most of us, like frankly to myself, I'm like I'm not Greta Gerwig. I didn't make $1 billion movie and I don't have a Nobel Prize, so it's not obvious to me that the plight of the Barbies during that section of the movie was so bad. It seemed like they were pretty happy, unless if I looked at that and thought about how I wouldn't have my MBA anymore, maybe I would feel differently. But I don't, and I can't imagine I would be the only woman to feel that way.
Well, there's also this thing where it's like, I mean, first of all, Barbie Land seems like population 50 or 100 or something. So I'm not sure like how prestigious it is to be the president or to win a Nobel Prize there. And also the I think it's really awesome. Well, so they're in this like state of innocence, right? Where it's kind of like the Garden of Eden or something, and like really, what does it matter whether you're under Ken patriarchy or girl boss feminism? Like, what does it matter? Like, either way, your days are all the same. You just do nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys think it was weird that they kept making fun of the pregnant Barbie? Like, I guess that must be pulled from real life, that there was like a weird pregnant doll, but that also seemed like a bizarre counter message. I mean, I guess it's like anti-natalist, but women don't like it when you're like, oh, pregnant bitches be off-putting.
Yeah, they say like they said, oh, this is Midge, I think was her name. They had a pregnant Barbie for a while, but that's weird. Like the Helen Mirren voiceover. She's like, and that's just weird. People don't like that.
Well, I think that was supposed to be kind of mocking the fact that happens. So in that sense, like anti-natalist. Does that make sense? But at the same time, like the movie also clearly does not like have any interest in the reproductive value of women or humanity. So that was an additional incoherence. Like it was supposed to be making fun of the misogyny, I think, of like the pregnant Barbie being weird to people. But then it also didn't make a convincing case for like pregnancy being, the focal point of humanity. So it didn't land really in
yeah.
Maybe I'm dumb, but I just thought that was about the toy personally, because it is weird to have like a plastic toy with another plastic toy pop out of her.
That's also true.
Oh, did the old toy? I mean, so there was a toy that was pregnant, and there was some controversy, and I don't know how old that toy was. It's conceivable in a previous era of America that the controversy could have come from the cultural right, where they're just like, well, should we be celebrating teen pregnancy or something like that?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know the actual controversy. But no, I read it. I did kind of read it as an anti-natalist thing, or at least just that thing in the culture where pregnancy and childbirth are low status. Like it's just like get her off the screen. Like we don't want this.
Yeah.
Damn, she really did have a detachable stomach. What the hell? Alan was Midge's husband, apparently, which I guess they didn't talk about that in the movie because he seems so obviously gay.
Yeah, I thought he was supposed to be like a implied Ken gay. I don't know, like
poor Michael Cera.
Yeah, apparently that role was possibly going to be Timothy Chalamet, who worked with Gerwig previously, but he was too busy.
It would have had a different.
Yeah, him and Michael Cera are like total inverses, because Timothy Chalamet is like such a delicious little twink that even if he's trying to be totally asexual, he can't turn it off, and Michael Cera can't turn sexuality on. So like, they're total. It would be a totally different thing.
But next to, I think, I kind of, I mean, it's known, it's established on this podcast that I'm not a Chalamet fan, and I think next to Gosling, I think he might look. I mean, he would. There's girls are still going to like him, but I think he would look. He could maybe play up the gay thing or something.
I guess we'll never know. Should we go through like the film, like the storyline of the film, like from the top? I think that would be a good way to kind of suss out.
Yeah, sure.
Liked of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start, and you guys can jump in. But my understanding, it starts, and I actually did a really quick like fast forward rewatch of it today. But what I mean, they start in Barbie Land. Everything is ideal.
Well, actually, it starts out with the 2001 parody, which
that's right.
When I said I walked in like 2 minutes before, I actually walked in like 15 seconds before the movie started. So I immediately sit down, and the first thing I see is that, And I have to say, like, it was one of the many times there were like about 20 other people in the movie theater. I think we were probably all Hispanic, and I think there were a lot of moments where I was the only person in the theater who laughed, and that was definitely one of them.
I wondered about that. Like, what? I mean, I get that Gerwig is a smart person and she's married to Baumbach and stuff, but like, what percent of the audience had any idea what that was about?
Can't have been. I mean, a lot of people have seen that imagery before in other parodies, I think, but I never know what the hell normies think of anything, honestly.
I just have serious doubts that very many people under even like 40 or 45 have any idea what that was about.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm thinking like 5% or less.
Yeah, I can confirm none of the people I saw. I understood the reference, but none of the people I saw the movie with understood the reference.
What's weird is that when I was growing up, like I think before I had seen The Godfather, like decades before, probably
Lol.
everything I knew about The Godfather was from The Simpsons, and maybe a few other like cultural touchstones, but mostly The Simpsons. And I was wondering if there even are shows today for like Zoomers and Alphas that play that function, where like if they haven't gotten to some like high level culture yet, it's sort of rendered through something they watch.
It's rendered through TikTok clips of Family Guy.
Right, but Family Guy I feel like has like all these crazy non sequiturs and doesn't do as much like extended, because you really can get like a lot of the Western canon through The Simpsons.
Yeah, 2001 is one. I know that I think like at least the multiple Simpsons jokes riff off of like that specific scene or 2001 in general. But you know what shows do that a lot? I remember from when I was a kid. I'm like about mid 20s, so I'm like at the very start of the Zoomer generation. Kid shows will do riffs off of movies a lot, but I feel like there's no way that you like the start of of Rugrats in Paris is a Godfather parody. I remember. So like if you were like a kid, you might have seen that, but I don't. Those are always weird to me because I feel like you don't even, by the time you actually see the movies, you might not even remember that those things are connected. And if you're like 15, I have no idea what the fuck YouTube videos you were watching.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's, I don't know how to answer that question.
It's an interesting example because I think with things like The Godfather, when a show you're watching is parodying it, even if you couldn't place the movie, you could, I think, as a young person, be like, oh, this is like mob tropes. They're probably referencing one of the famous like mob movies. So it's like you get it even if you don't get it. But the 2001 scene is like so specific, and like people who've even like seen and studied the movie aren't like agreed or sure on what it all means. So like that's a particularly sort of ambitious scene to spoof so directly.
Well, and that scene as well, I'd actually forgotten about this when we were talking about the Midge thing, but like that scene also is pretty explicitly like, if not antinatalist, like it's again putting that like air of low status on motherhood.
Yeah, like baby dolls.
The baby doll, yeah.
It's a pretty aggressive symbol, like smashing their baby dolls in favor of a glamorous life or something.
Is that even? I don't even know if that's true. By the way, did people suggest that like Barbie was supposed to represent like second wave feminism or whatever? Is that even a true bit of cultural anthropology? Because the whole movie is sort of based off of that idea that like Barbie was supposed to represent the professionalization of females or whatever.
I don't. I mean, I've not even read the Wikipedia on the actual Barbie doll itself, but I'm guessing it's Barbie's entire lifespan has had like cultural pressure from the right and the left, whereas the left is saying, oh, she's too sexy, or she's too idealized of a woman, and the right might also complain that she's too sexy, but just that like kids shouldn't have sexy toys. Yeah,
too mid.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure it comes from both directions. I'm not, and yeah, you could, because there was always a big Barbie thing about careerist Barbie. I don't know when they started doing all that, but there's 100 versions of Barbie, doctor, lawyer.
There's even the Simpsons episode about Malibu Stacy.
Yeah,
real Simpsons heads might remember.
I remember Malibu Stacy. Yeah,
yeah, and at least if we take the Malibu Stacy satire as like a good representation of what Barbie was in the culture. My recollection is that the Malibu Stacy portrayal on The Simpsons leans more heavily on the bimbo thing than the careerist thing.
Well, the plot was like Lisa finds it objectionable and does like a letter writing campaign or something.
Yeah, and then I think at the end there's a proto girl boss, Malibu Stacy.
Yeah. Okay, so we got the 2001 intro, and then they go into showing Barbie in her environment. She's everything is fake. There's actually nothing is wet or dirty. There's no running water or milk or anything. It's just you pretend to eat and stuff. And there's a funny part in the beginning, I think, where, and this could they talk about Ken. He's like, Ken only really exists in so much as Barbie looks at him. Other than that, and I don't know if that's some role reversal about feminism, like women in the past only felt like they existed to the extent men recognized them or something. But
well, actually, that's one thing I wanted to bring up, because I feel like all of the jabbering and discourse about the movie kind of, when I saw it, I thought that it didn't pay enough tribute to the fact that the entire Barbie, the point of Barbie Land is supposed to be that it's a reflection of a world where men, control everything, and women are the subordinate, agentless Kens. So, like, the plot of the Kens, in a sense, is supposed to be like women. Like, at the end of the movie, Ken finally has his own person, like, is encouraged to get his own personality, and then the plot of the Barbies are women who like control everything, and then lose control of it, and then at the end are like, well, maybe we shouldn't treat the Kens, the women, so badly after all. So, like, when I watched it with that in mind, I thought it was kind of funny that, like, almost like the genders are so unsympathetic to each other that the only way to dramatize their plight in a compelling way was to kind of reverse it and trick people into sympathizing with men and women by depicting them as women and men. Does that make sense? I don't know. I kept thinking of that as it went on.
It does make sense. It just doesn't feel like Gerwig ever like pulls it off, because I really feel like, and I don't know if no women listen to this show, but if any women happen to be listening to this show, leave a comment or something. But like, it didn't feel like any women who watched it actually did sympathize with Ken. They're just like, yeah, like, screw that guy. Like, he's just a typical guy. Like, screw him. Like,
Wait, Granite, you're saying I'm
sure.
not going to find GF by my charming appearances on this show?
I mean, it could happen, but I've pulled up the analytics and stuff, and it's like 91% male and 9% unknown.
I might have to drop off.
Yeah.
So customers who listen to this podcast also bought TNT on Amazon.
Yeah, I did have though one time I was on like Apple and I scrolled down and it's like similar things that had Red Scare, so I was like, okay. My listeners also listen to Red Scare, I guess. So.
Yeah, it's probably just because
A lot of cake boys.
Me and Toro have been scouring the internet tagging content with the Red Scare Zionist moniker, so that's probably how
Yeah.
But
anyway,
Can I go back to the Barbie Land thing just real quick? I want to speak on behalf of our women friends, because one thing I heard from a lot of girls I talked to about this movie was that they loved the scene where she's like getting ready and like drinking the fake orange juice and all that stuff, because that's how they played with their Barbies, which reminded me of like the Lego movie, because that movie did a really good job of like, oh, I remember like this is how I interacted with my toys as a kid. So like, in a way, like, I guess a little positive for the movie, like a lot of people I know really like that scene, because that's like, oh, it's just like I'm playing with my toys.
Yeah, and I don't know any actual like Barbie lore or how how people play with Barbies, but they did seem to give some like, I call it fan service, but not in a pejorative way. They gave some fan service to the people who actually played with it.
Yeah, I mean, in general, the way that the characters moved through space, I think, was, again, like, because I guess on Twitter everybody is a word sal, even if they're not. They are one for the duration of tweeting. A lot of it didn't talk about the aesthetics of the movie, or like the dance numbers, I think, and the songs were almost completely unmentioned. And I thought that they were kind of charming, if not necessarily the most like original, and also kind of the messaging might have been a little cringe, but in general, like the way that, first, like when Ken like goes flying through the air, it's obviously not supposed to be like realistic at all. It's like a doll. It's like the way the doll.
Yeah, exactly.
I liked that. I thought it was a nice touch.
Yeah, and on the dance numbers, like you'll see a ton of edits of that once high quality rips come out. You'll see lots of Ken dancing on Twitter soon, so watch out.
God
Yeah, I
bless.
think Ken's big number is probably the best part of the movie.
Oh, I was like hand over my face laughing at that, and the girl next to me, like the girl next to me, was like, "This is so bizarre," and I was like trying not to like explode in the theater.
Try not to throw up a Roman. Just kidding.
Yeah,
Satire, hashtag parody.
yeah. Hail Ken.
Did you guys think? Because granted, I think you mentioned like, they're in a state of innocence, and there is like this Eden metaphor, and one of the
Yeah.
things that I thought was sort of funny was it's like in the secular version of Christian cosmology, like they won't acknowledge the fall as something man did. They can only imagine neurosis as like the natural outcome of like things God or our creator did to us. So like, you know, Barbie doesn't fuck up. She just starts worrying about death one day. And I guess
Mhm.
they explain later that that's because the woman in the real world was sort of projecting those thoughts onto her. But I thought that was just like, I think that actually, obviously, Gerwig's just doing this because it's how she sees the world, not because it's insightful. But like that is an insight into just like the libtard view of things. That's like you can do nothing wrong, but you're born, and one day you will start to find your life dissatisfactory, like with that, or
Yeah.
unsatisfactory without like having sinned or having done something you weren't supposed to do.
Yeah, and that gets us back to like where I guess where we were in the movie. It shows them in their kind of innocent state. But then she starts to have these anxious feelings about death, and no one,
Irrepressible, I believe was the word.
yeah, and they advise her to go see basically like shaman bar, like Kate McKinnon basically plays like some sort of shaman or oracle or something. Go to see the shaman, and she's like, oh, yeah, you're having like you're having like an awakening experience. Someone on the outside is willing you to life, and you are also. This wouldn't also be happening if you weren't open to it. Um, and then she gives her the red pill, blue pill thing with the shoes, and I actually thought that scene. I just rewatched. I thought that scene's funny because Barbie's just like, no, just give me the high heel. I just want to stay here. Like I'm good. Like. And the Kate McKinnon character's like, oh, actually, you have like I'm gonna make you do the thing you don't want to do. Similar to the ending where the women just sort of force other people to do what they want.
Yeah, that kind of goes to what you were saying to your studies about it's like a reverse of the Eden story. It would be like if God made them leave not through any fault of their own, but because he was making them think sinful things, and then he also made them choose to leave when they could have chosen to stay and be this. It is a weird sort of version where there is no kind of agency at all in our fall, and it's
Right, and
very nice. And
views neurosis as like this so obviously more evolved state that it's just like inevitable, and the subject wanting to avoid it is like sort of irrelevant, which is like so weird. Like if you're not sort of steeped in that I don't know, libtardery, like it looks really bizarre.
Well, speaking of neurosis, it's funny too because I've seen on Twitter quite a few times people assume that Greta Gerwig is Jewish, um, and she's not, I guess, right?
She's a Unitarian, so
and she went to Unitarian, went to Catholic school. I mean,
married a Jewish guy. She's basically like people like I wasn't born in Texas, but I got there as soon as she could. That's basically her with being a secular Jew.
Yeah, I'm a Catholic who was raised Unitarian, so I am the anti-Gerwig.
No way, I didn't know
that. So anyway, just that the idea of neurosis as a higher form of being is, although
I think that is like a popular like libtard idea right now. It's kind of like how every girl in their 20s is telling the men they date to go to therapy, like,
of course,
for no reason.
Like it's the most unbelievable part of the movie is that America Ferrera wasn't seeing a therapist, and that you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like if she had just gone to therapy, the movie would not have occurred.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So that's actually an interesting insight. Like Barbie doesn't. She's actually kind of forced to. It's not through agency that she decides to like gain experience in the world and be pushed out of Eden. It's actually someone decides that for her. But interestingly, Ken decides for himself. Ken has agency because he just comes, right? He actually wasn't wanted.
He
He's
has,
like, whatever,
he has
I'm
the
gonna
will
go.
to conquer. We really are accidentally establishing the secretly based bona fides of this movie, but
I'll alter that. I'll say unintentional. I can see a case for unintentionally based, but not secretly based.
Yeah. I wanted to hit on something I thought was funny about the Ken thing because, with the whole Barbenheimer thing, Oppenheimer is based on this book called, or I think it's called
American Prometheus.
American Prometheus, yeah.
Yeah, Prometheus, yeah. And it's like, in a way, like Ken is more like Prometheus. Like he goes to Earth and brings back fire through the patriarchy.
Yeah, and he has to remain living with women he can't have sex with, which is basically like having your organs pecked out by birds for eternity.
Exactly, yeah. That's his punishment.
So they go out. They first materialize, I guess. I don't know how the Barbie Tesseract or whatever works, but they materialize on the beach in California, and they immediately begin to experience sexual harassment. Ken finds it thrilling that he's finally noticed by gay men and stuff.
I have comments on this too.
Yeah, go for it.
As a Californian, I just want to point out some aesthetic inaccuracies on this scene because there's way too many white people on the Venice Beach boardwalk in this movie, and for some reason they're all harassing them, which is there's North Carolina frat boys are not in Venice Beach harassing blonde women. I promise you guys, that's not how it works. But
yeah, she gets slapped on the butt by a white guy.
Yeah.
And the construction workers, one of them is black.
Construction workers are also white, yeah, or the ones talking about, at least.
3 white, 1 black, but the black guy never says anything.
Yeah, the most unbelievable part of that was the one black guy being there at all. Honestly, it would just be 4 Mexicans.
Yeah, it would be 4 Mexicans.
No, I think hopefully in 200 years, if we win, white male sexual harassment will be like dragons, where they're like, look, there's lots of references to this in the historical record, but we're not sure it ever happened.
Yeah, I saw a cartoon yesterday on Twitter. It's like a guy in a Confederacy shirt on a train, harassing people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing about this is you have to know that when they made the movie, they knew that that's not what it was really like. They had to clear people out to bring the extras in, so they know as they're making it that it's not a depiction of reality.
Yeah.
But when people watch, normies watch the movie, they really do experience that as realer than real. Like people laughing at jokes about men, playing guitar or whatever. Even though that's not something any Zoomer probably has ever experienced, it is kind of dispiriting, even with my kind of ideological objections to the specific content. Is just kind of dispiriting how people really will just kind of see something in a movie and they'll be like, that's what reality is like.
Yeah, I do think though that Gerwig, if my timeline is right, Gerwig has been a famous actress then director since her early 20s, and if you take this movie and Lady Bird together, I think she might have no idea what the United States is like after 1998. Just based on what her life has been. And so, because one of the first things Granite and I remarked upon after leaving, and I've heard other people talk about this, is that the cultural references, including the guitar playing thing, were weirdly stuck in a bygone era. And it just sort of feels like her contact with broader American culture was frozen in the 90s or the early 2000s, and maybe she just has no fucking idea. Because also, even the little speech the girl gives of Barbie is a fascist, that's more something that seems like an out of touch person's view of what a Zoomer's opinion. I think a real Zoomer, especially a brown Zoomer, would just be like, what the fuck is Barbie? Or
No, I think there's an angle here because I've seen this in other media, and this is almost embarrassing to admit, but this same thing happened with the Gossip Girl remake, where it comes off just like millennials trying to ape or try to copy this like Zoomer culture, but they like don't really understand it. So they're just like nerd millennial writers trying to like copy this thing that's not exactly or not at all how like real people talk. And so it just comes off as like extremely cringy.
Well,
And
yeah,
got
I
that
think
from
also in defense of millennials, and I am one, it's like the cultural like life ways of Zoomers don't really seem human. So it's like
yeah,
what
no,
are like
definitely.
your mating rituals? It's like, oh, we send each other Family Guy clips. It's like, oh well, I can't put that on screen. Everybody will kill themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
it's Lindy, and it's good that older people are not in touch with the youth. That's how it's supposed to be. But I guess the problem is that the youth are so out of touch with everything, as you say, that it's just I don't know. I kind of almost feel though like when young people leave the theater, they won't even realize that this isn't what their real life is like. Does that make sense? That's
Yes,
sort of
and
Yeah.
I
the-
actually would support like government subsidies to just like keep forcing like normative like boyfriend girlfriend stuff into movies even if young people aren't doing it, just because it's like, well, we might trick like 1% of them into just like going to a fucking movie together, like, because God knows
Well,
what they're coming up with on their own.
so true.
yeah, I was gonna say like that's actually a really good idea because I'm pretty sure the government already does that. Like with a lot of stuff, like there's a lot of quotas that have to go into movies, and or when I say government, I of course mean CIA, but like there's there's a lot of stuff that like has to be in movies or that like other people get final approval on. So I
yeah,
don't know, there's
these things get unofficially regulated, but they get regulated, and it's
yeah
like, I mean, I think the Oscars recently announced. I don't know if it's in effect yet, but by like 2025 or something, like half your cast has to be minority to be like eligible for Best Picture, something like
yeah
that. Like,
exactly.
or maybe that includes the crew and stuff too. But either way, it's like, um, yeah, they force things into movies. I was wondering, they have the guitar playing that's like an out of touch reference, but yeah, they could have gone with like I don't know, would it make sense for Zoomers for the guys to be like pushy SoundCloud rappers, like just constantly trying to get them to hear their track or
Yeah, like
something?
that actually would have been funny as fuck if they had one of the Kens being like, "No, you don't understand. It's good that Young Lean's flow is bad. Like that's his aesthetic."
Uh,
I
yes, that would have
was,
been great. I mean, I may have made one or two women listen to my SoundCloud raps back in the day, so maybe that's already something that 18-year-olds can't relate to. But I would have laughed.
yeah, that would have been funny. The Kens are constantly like sending links to their SoundCloud. Like this one's good. This one's good.
Yeah, or if one of them tells one of the Barbies, "I already explained this on my podcast."
Yeah.
Dang, we should have wrote this movie.
I think the best out of touch reference has got to be the Pavement reference. Because like what was the last year that a male would have realistically tried to drop knowledge about Pavement to impress a woman? Like when was the last time that credibly would have happened?
I don't even know Pavement.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Grant. I tried it post 2000 and it didn't go over well. So yeah, that tells you. But what's funny about that too is like just thinking about Pavement's place in the culture. Like I almost wondered if that was like an inside joke, because it's like Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig like definitely get dinner with fucking Pavement, or like those types of people.
Well, hey, Mr. Loveline, you should know that Malkmus went on Corolla like a couple years ago. I think Malkmus, and he used to follow Lomez. I think he stopped. Someone probably pointed it out to him.
Yes, I've
but,
heard tale of this before. Yeah, maybe the Pavement reference was more pointed than I even knew. Maybe he's on the outs of the the
well, and Malkmus tweeted about it too. He's like, I'm in Europe on tour, and someone told me I'm in the new Barbie movie. But yeah, that's exactly the thing that I knew by mid 2000s, that no girl was ever going to be impressed by like me being able to like name my favorite Pavement album. Like,
that's funny because when I was in high school, it was like 2014. I bought the Crooked Rain vinyl, and then I played it on my friend's what's it called, record player. And then this girl that I was dating, like I didn't try to push it on her because I would never do that. I was well socialized. She actually, like she became a big fan of the album. I remember. So like that is more likely that like women are so starved for men, like mansplaining pavement to them, that they would kind of independently adopt it to try to get the man's attention than what we see there. Like Zoomer women wish that this would happen to them, and it ain't happening.
Yeah, she just already liked you, so that's
exactly that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like it's totally not. It is that sort of like that one meme about the women like wanting The Handmaid's Tale to be real and sort of like memeing it into
yeah.
That's basically what the favorite reference to that movie was like.
Yeah. And like in the court scene, I mean, there's a Citizens United reference, which is, I mean, again, it's kind of like the 2001 thing. I mean, more people probably got that one, but it's still a little funny.
Yeah, and that's definitely, I think, because I'm like pretentious above all else, like that's the type of thing that gets my dander up a lot, because it's like I don't even know how I feel about that ruling, but I know if you like dive into it at all, there are like non-retarded people on all sides of that, because like the implications of corporations and individuals being considered in some legal contexts like interchangeable has like interesting and varied results. So that getting memed into just like, oh, the mainstream culture knows that that's synonymous with like the cynicism of our like broken conservative politics or something, like that's just kind of annoying to have that, like the war on terror is right there for you. Like let's all stay unified. Don't bring Mitt Romney into this.
We were going through the beats of the movie, and I think we left off on just the beach. From the beach, they go to the school or something, and then
they get arrested, and I think they split up, right?
That's yeah, they get arrested because they hit the guy, then they get the clothes, and they get arrested again. And then I think they go to the school. She wants to confront the girl, and he just wanders the school library looking for books on patriarchy.
Well, he goes to the mall first, and there's that epic montage of people playing golf and drinking brewskis.
Oh yeah, and I found that funny too. I posted this on Twitter, but like when he's going up that escalator, there's a video of the video shows Clinton and Reagan. So it's a sort of symbolic of maybe Gerwig acknowledging that she's stuck in the 90s.
It's also funny because it's like, I know people would blame the patriarchy, but this is just another moment of the movie undermining itself, where it's like making a montage of like dudes seeming awesome is just like trivially easy. Like you can literally take anything from culture, whereas like making the opposite montage would just be totally fucking impossible.
Oh, you mean like making dudes seem, like that like Gillette commercial when like the black guy has to stop the white guy from harassing some girl?
Yeah, no, I meant more like making a montage where just like women seem like they're fun to hang out with.
Like that's the whole movie, and the whole movie still has less of that content than that one scene.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Right, like in Barbie Land is supposed to be that, and like
and it's like annoying.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem very
none of it seems. It's totally obvious. Like nobody actually acts like a real human being in Barbie. Like there's that one dance scene that goes on like uncomfortably long, honestly, and they're all just kind of staring at each other fakely, right? Which maybe that's realistic. I don't know.
Right. It's like the movie wants to depict women free. Like, what would women do for fun with each other? Free of like the oppressive male gaze, and it's just like stultifying and retarded, and also they're mean to the pregnant lady for no reason.
That tweet that people do like a couple times a year where it goes big, and it's like, women, if there are no men for 24 hours, what would you do? And all the responses are like, I would take a walk. I would get coffee by myself and just enjoy not being harassed. That's basically Barbie Land.
Yeah, I would win the Nobel Prize. Except
I would drink coffee out of an empty cup.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then I just want to say, like, I feel like none of the scenes with Will Ferrell were funny at all. I didn't.
I don't understand why he was in the movie. Like at the end, he didn't even do anything, right? Like.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are bringing this up. I have in my notes here that like almost all the corporate Mattel stuff could have just been cut out.
Yeah, it felt like just an excuse to have Will Ferrell in the movie, but he didn't like. In the end, like they didn't even want anything. They were just chasing Barbie, and then they just left, like inexplicably. I don't know.
But granted, wouldn't you say that the way the Mattel execs are portrayed is like another good example of the movie coming in with sort of like boilerplate modern lib propaganda, like, oh, it's an old boys club, they're all about the bottom line, but then it just gets like so weird that it totally travels away from that, and by the end, like, Will Ferrell like really cares about Barbie for like reasons that aren't clear, and like his motivations
Yeah.
are very strange but like don't seem to be about money. So like it was bizarre and totally unnecessary, but it's just like, you know, one of many bizarre and unnecessary like little turns in the plot.
Yeah, the,
Also,
the the funniest part of that, sort of cut you off, was that like
no, you're good.
the Ken Mojo Dojo Casa House, like they mentioned that it was selling extremely well and that everybody wanted one, and that he's, and then after that he's like, you know, like, I don't, it's not about the money, it's about, you know, women's representation or whatever. And again, it's hard to parse out like what, like, are they ironically saying that wouldn't sell well, or are they saying that would sell well and that's an example of sexism? Like, is the joke supposed to be like that's not actually how like evil capitalist execs work? Like you said, it's totally incoherent. But I thought that was funny because it's clear from the reaction of the movie that, yeah, like, people would buy the Ken Mojo Dojo Casa house.
That's exactly what I was about to say, actually, because like they're like make a point of saying that it's selling really well, and then I'm like, why are the mean execs trying to shut it down? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier about the like Jon Stewart stuff, where they are very freely like they have characters that seem to have no coherent or consistent motivations. Um, and then if you question that, people online just say, well, it's a movie for little girls. Then if you say like, well, why is there a transvestite, like why is there a troon in this movie, they're like, well, it's a movie for adults. And it's like they just like, you know.
Yeah, or the, you know, tawdry jokes.
There's also
Yeah, it's funny.
there's something very funny in the concept of the Mojo Dojo Casa House, because it's like it's a very funny like male version of inclusion where, like, you know, the Kens are a multiracial working class coalition, let's say, and they've created this name for their like boy hangout that, and women are like, no, that's dumb, that's insulting, that's actually like disrespectful of the various cultures, but like the men were all enjoying it, like that's, you know, that's how men get along.
Very true.
In the back in the narrative of the movie, the Ken goes to the library, gets some books, then he goes to like some office and he asks for a job. And this is a kind of an incoherent conversation too, because he's talking to this like business guy. The business guy's like, well, sorry, you need like an MBA or a PhD to get a job here. Ken says, you know, but I thought this, you know, can't you hook me up? Patriarchy, you know? And the guy's like, oh no, you know, patriarchy, we hide it now, but we do it even better. But no, I can't help you. So it's like, well, which one is it? Like
the first thing he says is, Ken's like, but I'm a man, doesn't that help? And he's like, actually, that's kind of a negative. And then he's like, oh, so there's no more patriarchy? And he says, well, we still have it, we just kind of hide it better. And so those are two interesting statements, actually, because the first one is, you know, kind of alluding to the fact that, you know, well, what someone who is kind of dour might call an extremely feminized corporate and you know, academic world. And the second one is the guy sort of saying like, but we just let the broads, you know, think they run things. And so again, it's not really sure, like, you know, that does sort of feel like something that a guy might jokingly say, but I had no idea like to what extent like the character is saying it ironically, or the filmmakers like are saying like this is what we think is true.
yeah, I mean, it felt knowing, like it felt like a knowing joke for the audience, like, because you know, I would get the impression that most like women in the audience would be like, ain't that the truth? You know, men are still in charge. They just pretend like they aren't.
Yeah, but the first line is like for the men to laugh, like, haha, it's true, you know, the broad's house by the balls, and then the second half is the women to be like, haha, but they really, you know, we still have so much more to go, don't we, sister? You know what I mean? Like, so it's like one,
Yeah.
as always, the movie sort of like there were a lot of jokes that were funny, but like they're like so contradictory that I guess I'm not even sure that everybody understands why they're laughing at it.
Yeah.
In unison.
Yeah, if you wanted to say that Greta Gerwig has like some evil genius at work here or some ulterior motive to what she's doing. I think it would just be like the good artistic instincts of making sure there's something for everyone, even beyond your polemical point. So it's like, yes, it's going to be a feminist propaganda film, but like there will be stuff for sexist dad to laugh at. Like, hitting all quadrants, I think.
Yeah, wasn't that a tagline? It's like, this is a movie. If you like Barbie, you love this movie. If you hate Barbie, you love this movie. Wasn't that am I misremembering, or wasn't that a tagline?
It was something like
maybe.
that. Yeah.
I don't remember it.
Yeah, which is true. I mean, I kind of noted that. I'm like, this is a movie where like it sort of attracts everybody, including its detractors. Like if you walked away from it, ready to have with a tirade about how it was like woke or how it was like pink washed capitalism or whatever, like you still were inspired, and also you paid to see it. So in that sense, I think it was a very kind of Barnum and Bailey sort of Unitarian Jewish hucksterism at work.
Yeah, and I think Gerwig and Baumbach wrote it, I think, and I think films, unlike TV, are normally seems like they're just written by one or a couple people, but this does feels like a committee was involved, and just they threw a bunch of jokes in a pot, and they just took some, and they weren't necessarily consistent in their I guess message or whatever.
So the internet, Arturo, is saying that the main tagline is "She's everything, he's just Ken," but I definitely saw the line you're talking about as well.
Yeah. He's just Ken.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking rude.
Yeah, so then Ken, I guess he checks out a couple of other jobs. They won't give him a job at like the beach, and there's one other one, I think, at the hospital. And then he goes back to the school, I guess, to meet up with Barbie, and I think previously someone asked him the time, but that like was the defining moment of his life, that someone respected him enough to ask him a question.
Yeah, the way that they move through space, or like the story of the movie, is completely jacked up. Like it's almost like they kind of are shrugging their shoulders at the end. Like it's almost like it's a joke, like how incoherent the story is. Like we're not taking this too seriously. Don't worry, which is kind of insulting, but also understandable. I mean, like the shambolic nature of it, even aesthetically, is supposed to kind of make you laugh without like having to explain like why is it funny that the movie is shitty.
Well, there's also a part toward the end, I think, or some point where I think Barbie, she's like, doesn't know where Ken lives, doesn't know where he sleeps, and they never answer that. That to me, I felt like to me undermines the whole like secretly based things. It's like Gerwig really has no character, no love for this guy, Ken.
Poor Ken. But anyway, so she goes, but she does at some point, like she gets put in they usher her into like a black SUV, and she goes to Mattel, and I think that's when Ken goes back to Barbie Land. So she goes to the office, and they try to get her in the box, and then Ken like makes the perilous journey back to Barbie Land. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, and I got it. I'm like looking through some website that has like the plot beats on it. But yeah,
I tried to find the transcript online, but I guess they don't have it yet.
Yeah.
SMH.
Yeah, they take her back to Barbie Land, or the women help her escape. She has a brief meeting with the creator.
Yeah, that scene where they tell her to get back in the box, and like the what's it called, the straps are almost tighten around her wrists, and she like pulls them out, and you see her kind of like freaking out. That was interesting, I guess, thematically. I guess I think it's kind of obvious. Like I guess that you read that as like, her being induced to return to her sort of female servitude, but that's a weird symbol, because like simultaneously you have another example of that back at Barbie Land with Ken in like bringing patriarchy. So that's almost like two different views of it. Like Barbie, it's not like a sexy, she views it as literally a box, whereas like the Barbies are induced to view it as something sexy and cool. So like that's maybe the kind of two different takes on the same idea.
I'm looking through some of these frames now, and this part when they escape Mattel and they go back to Barbie Land is also when we get this brief like glimpse of America Ferrera's husband.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that when I saw it.
Well, he seems. I mean, like I personally feel like the movie was a little long. I say this all the time on this podcast, but like if it's not a particularly like smart movie or whatever, I think they should really strive for an hour 40 or an hour 30 or something. But they show this guy a couple times, and I kind of feel like it's a wasted time. And he's just like another male character that's like, I mean, is there a male character in here who's not like an embarrassment or in some way? I mean, we like Ken, but you're supposed to conceivably not like him. But
I just
this
thought it was
guy's-
funny she had a white husband.
oh yeah,
Well,
yeah.
no, and a very like paradigmatic, like long-suffering eunuch husband of the the WOC, who's like interesting. Like it seemed like very good casting and characterization for like an archetype in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's trying to learn Spanish, I guess, to better connect with his English-speaking wife.
Yeah, the Hispanic audience, the Mexicans like that one.
And then they show him again at the end just to kind of like make him look goofy too.
Yeah,
but-
he has a psychology book he bought that's called "What to Do When Your Daughter Is Wednesday."
Really? That's amazing.
No, I just made that up, but that would be
That should have been in there.
Okay, then now we're back at Barbie Land. Ken has taken over. We've discussed a bunch of this already, but this is both kind of the best and worst part of the movie to me. It's a good collection of scenes, I feel like, but it also they destroy sort of any narrative force that they had going.
I gotta say, I liked I liked as a character. I liked Weird Barbie, if only because I think McKinnon she's funny, even if like I don't know the material like on paper isn't that funny. She's just because it's very like sort of like wacky, loose disposition, kind of like what Will Ferrell would have had if he wasn't like 80 years old in this movie. So I thought it was kind of funny that she was some sort of, I don't know, like resistance force. I mean, against the patriarchy. I thought that was funny, even if the jokes were corny. But in general, yeah, that plot was just kind of that part of the movie was just kind of aggravatingly on the nose to me.
Yeah, and I had actually forgotten. I did this little like rewatch of the movie, and I had forgotten just in the theater just how like stoked all the women really were. Like, they like are really into this this Kenland thing.
More than the Kens almost.
Yeah,
we were
They're, like, rubbing
we were
feet
always
and
doing
stuff.
it for them, Arturo. Don't let them tell you otherwise.
Exactly.
dressing up as French maids and rubbing feet and stuff. It's
It really is a bizarre choice how they just like made all the Barbies so happy. Like, it seems so obvious to go the other way.
yeah, and then Margot Robbie Barbie in, I guess the feminist inclination when they see a bunch of women happy is to intervene. Yeah, the whole intervening thing happens, which we've talked about, and we haven't really talked about yet is how they get the men to fight each other. Anyone want to explain that?
Well, actually, but before that, I think it's funny. Like Barbie brings the what is it, Sasha and Sasha the mom or the
It's the daughter, I
Gloria
think.
and Sasha. She brings Gloria and Sasha, and like she's like excited to tell them about how Barbie Land is this great place where women rule, and they start driving through, and she starts noticing weird things, and they get to the house, and like she's totally embarrassed to have brought them here to this patriarchal house. I thought that was funny. Her sort of like mortification at being almost like having Sasha proven right that she is just a what is it, running dog of the patriarchal overlords or whatever. But then I guess I'll continue on into how they convince the Kens. This was stupid. Apparently, like the Kens are going to vote to change the constitution of Barbie Land to make patriarchy the law of the land, which is again like a totally like fucking nerd story beat. So what they do is they trick, using their feminine wiles, they trick the Kens into first kind of like falling deeply in love with them, and then switching it up and kind of giving their romantic attention to other Kens, thus making the Kens fight each other. And that didn't make any sense because like it was like two groups of Kens were fighting, but some of the Kens that were on the same side were the ones that I thought were mad at each other. That didn't make any sense, right?
Also, the
Yeah.
Barbies are doing a much more coercive version of the same things that Ricky Vaughn has been brought up on charges for. This is this is denying people their civil right to vote.
Right. Stay
Yeah,
in
that's
line,
right.
y'all.
They tricked him to miss the vote, didn't they?
Yep.
That literally was what happened.
Wow.
God, you've been sitting on the joke for a while. I hope. You agree?
Well, it's funny too because when Ken overtakes Barbie Land, it's like a bloodless coup, right? He just comes in and he says, "Look, I've got this other way of living. Let's try it." When she comes back, she has to use like CIA color revolution tactics or whatever
Right.
to
No,
like
yeah, Ken had
agitate.
clearly read Gray Mirror of the Dark Prince and understood that seduction is the only true form of
Well,
Ken's like, look, some of you are dark elves or whatever, and some of you are hobbits.
the things Ken was like, I'm not saying the movie is secretly based or whatever, but I think clearly they are familiar with some of, I don't know, our things or just generally kind of like new memes. Because like some of the things Ken was saying was too specific to not have been like aesthetically graphic. Like the thing he says about like everything is to uplift the male gender or whatever. Do you know that line? He's like everything is
Yeah,
that again. That was too specific to not like be, even if it wasn't meant to promote it. Like just like kind of grabbing the aesthetics of these things, or even some of the kind of vaporwave-ish aesthetics. Those were clearly like nods to something, even if they weren't endorsements. Do y'all agree?
Yeah, I
um,
think so. I think I would say that what's weird is because I would say what sort of like makes a good artist is that they can sort of like take in what's percolating in the culture and reflect it back without really like consciously knowing what's going on. So I could see some of that, but I do think there's been some stuff with Gosling where he's like more than winking. Like whenever he gets asked about his like persistent presence in memes, he'll always say like, "What is a meme?" Like, I don't know what a meme is, which seems to me like a very self-conscious way to be like. The second question in this line of questioning is about how much men love me, so like I have to get out of this right now.
Yeah, he's a smart guy.
Golden Boy, would you ever consider using a Gosling avatar?
I think it would be good. Back in the day, I used a Don Draper avatar, and I didn't get nearly as many followers as when I switched to Leonardo DiCaprio. Specifically, though, Romeo and Juliet, 1996, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
Ken really does have a beautiful voice. Gosling really has a beautiful voice. When he's singing the guitar for Barbie, like that bitch. Why didn't she just love him?
We could have been so happy together.
Well, that's a big issue I take with the movie. That's that I just don't think in 2023 anyone should be making movies about like pro atomization movies. You should get your like tax credits revoked for that.
Well, right. There's also like a weird. I mean, I guess I'm being like a little too literal and oddest brained here, but it's like it is a weird thing in the metaphor of the movie where it's like, yes, if you're literally created by this old Jewish woman named Rita, then like you
Ruth.
then you don't
That's even better.
you don't have to worry about reproduction. But like obviously that's not the situation, because like it sort of imagines this whole cosmology where it's like, look, you just wake up in the world, like no one made that happen, so you just like follow your truth. And I don't know if the implication is like, and if this is the last generation of humans, like so be it, at least we all eat, pray, loved. But like it just sort of totally ducks like with her relationship with her creator, and I guess just like the nature of dolls being sort of eternal themselves, it like the metaphor doesn't actually allow the movie to address the question of posterity.
Well, yeah, and literally, like the movie ends with her going to see her gynecologist. Like that's the only person who's going to have anything to do with her female reproductive system. Is I guess is that the joke? I don't know. People laughed really loud at that, and I have no like. I would have liked to ask them like what was funny about it. You know?
Right, because I think the surface level joke is just like, oh, it's funny because this is her dream, but as everyone knows, having a vagina is a nightmare.
Well, I took it so. I think the intended reading, I think what Gerwig intended is to say, you know, Barbie has had her Pinocchio experience. She's a real girl now, meaning she has real girl parts. But I also wondered if there was any possibility that the intent there was, well, a woman is anyone who can go to a doctor and get girl parts. So I was wondering if she was, going to be like getting a procedure, just so she could be a real girl, like so many
That's a good part.
great people with like those pink flags on Twitter.
Barbie is a troon. That's interesting reading.
Yeah, she's going to get a, what do they call them? Neo vagina or something?
I believe the medical term is axe wound.
Graham, it's really ruining my day here. I don't like that.
Yeah. Now, I have to say, just as an aside, like Margot Robbie looked great in the movie. I don't want to hear anything about Midge. She looks perfect.
Yeah,
big
yeah.
fan.
I mean,
Not
we did a whole we did that whole like Twitter space about that stupid mid meme, but and I'll just say it again here in case anyone's listening that wasn't didn't listen to that. But I feel like that meme and so many others are like, there's a guy who understands trolling and understands memes, and he makes a joke, and then there's a bunch of really stupid people below him who don't understand it's a joke, and they carry it, right? And they like blow it up to these vast proportions.
Yeah, there was. I do appreciate that meme because it completely ruined the one line in the movie where Helen Mirren, the narrator, is like, Margot Robbie was the wrong person to cast if the creators wanted to make it seem like she should have anything. She should be self-conscious about her looks. And like the entire week before the movie started, everybody was talking about how she was like mid now.
well. I
That
do.
was
I do
unintentional.
want
guerrilla
to
marketing.
enter this mid discourse again now, unfortunately, which is that she's a gorgeous woman. She's gorgeous in this movie, but I think maybe in part because she's playing a doll, it is like a performance, I think, where sexuality is totally absent. And what's weird about that is that she's supposed to be, like we said, this like neurotic higher being, whereas like Ken, played by Ryan Gosling, is both like a dumbass, but he's still like, it seems to me his performance like retains male sexuality, and like his performance in this is probably sexually appealing to women and gay men in a way that like Robbie's performance is like not sexy. So again, that just makes me think like in the lib cosmology, like the the liberated person is concerned with things and behaving in a way that makes them sort of like non-sexual.
Well, it's interesting too because even before the like the fog of the Garden of Eden or whatever has been lifted, Ken's trying to kiss her, and he's like saying like, "Oh, I want to stay over at your house. I don't know why, but I have this inclination that I should." Like he is somehow already in touch with some element of humanity that none of the Barbies have.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny and like affirming that like being like a horny tryhard registers as like a 1 or a 2 on like the sexy scale, whereas like whatever Barbie was doing just literally registers as asexual.
So the Barbies end up winning the election. The Kens are
Through their vicious
what
campaign of voter suppression.
through their vicious campaign of voter suppression. Hopefully the indictments from the Fulton County DA are coming any day now. One thing I thought was beautiful was in the night before the big arbitrary battle, the Kens are all going to sleep in their house, and like every single Ken in his room has a TV of like a horse, like a screensaver of a horse riding like at night, like the entire night. That was just like, I don't know, the set design in the movie is really beautiful. I have to give them props for that. It just made me laugh so many times.
Yeah, I've been doing that lately. It's pretty nice. You guys should try it.
What, the screensaver at night?
Yeah. Just put on a horse on your
Yeah,
TV.
I got three Rokus in this shitty studio apartment. I gotta figure out how to get some horses on there.
Right. Is it just the background of the like Hollywood looking purple town, right?
Roku City, yeah.
Roku City. I think in the movie, no lie, there's what is it? There's some ad in the movie, and then there's like a Roku channel logo on it. Do y'all remember that?
Oh, it sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
Fuck, I wish I could remember. So some of the fake ads, despite being kind of over, like kind of too on the nose, were pretty funny. The Depression Barbie, when I laughed, almost in spite of myself. Do you remember that? It's like Depression Barbie. Watch
Uh,
the
Yeah.
BBC Pride and Prejudice.
oh yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
almost like a good description of the entire movie of like being charmed in spite of myself.
it's all jokes that I've heard a million times on Twitter or whatever, but it's still kind of funny to see them in film form.
Yeah, the Barbies win. Then Barbie and Ken have this like final confrontation where basically she insists that he go off and become his own man. That he should wander alone.
Like Kane.
Yeah, like Cain. um, and then she goes to meet the creator, and I think it's funny that they like one of you mentioned, this Jewish woman Ruth Handler is the creator, and she plays this godlike role. Although, oh yeah,
I was created by a Jewish man named Yahweh, so I can relate.
oh you're not of the Yakub batch.
The jury's still out on
No,
that, honestly.
Yakub created white people. Yahweh created Mexicans. You need to review your Old Testament.
It's interesting. There is a montage. Like there's the montage of men that we talked about when he's going up the escalator, and then there is like a montage of like kind of soft focus home movies of the female experience that Barbie like sees when she touches Ruth's hand. And then when they untouch hands, she's crying. That actually that was kind of moving. It was a very heartstring pulling moment, I thought.
Well, I'm
scenes of motherhood.
I'm just revealing my autism here, but that scene for me broke kayfabe because it's like, okay, you've set up this whole like gay secular version of Eden and stuff, but now you're literally gonna have God as like a nice Jewish grandmother being like, oh, there are no rules, like all I want for you is to like live your truth and like don't worry about death, like that's not a thing, like you just go get a pap smear, like that's all you need to take care of.
Well, also that she tells the creator, like, I want to be a real girl, and the creator's like, well, it's not up to me, you just decide that. And I don't know theologically how I feel about that. Like,
no, yeah, exactly. Like she's like, I have to show you what being a human is like before you make the choice to exist, which is literally like the exact opposite of how it works. As far as I remember, I wasn't, I just started existing, and that was the start of my consciousness, right?
No, God does do that. We've actually discussed this on the podcast before. He just gives you the Men in Black red laser mind wipe before you go into your human body.
Well, that's more or less what Golden Boy and I believe, but it's but either way, I just find the aspect of it's just like, oh, you just get to decide like what state of being you're in. I don't know if that part I support, but
yeah, it's much more honest when secular movies do the original Blade Runner thing where like the creation meets the creator and gets mad, like tries to kill the creator. Like obviously as a Christian, like I think that's Promethean and like why we don't agree with like Promethean visions, but that at least acknowledges that like the power has to lie somewhere, like with the creator or the created. You're not just going to have this like, it's not just going to be a guidance counselor who tells you that, the strength was inside you all along.
True.
Okay, I think we covered the movie pretty well. I've got some other questions. We probably covered most of these, but
I have one question. I think I saw on Twitter that the mermaid Barbie was Dua Lipa. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Her wig is like so big that you don't get as good of a look at her face. But
John Cena was in there too.
Yeah, we got John Cena. Yeah, which was your favorite Barbie? Mine was the fat Barbie.
Naturally, she was the lawyer.
I mean, obviously, as a God-fearing man, I support Midge fighting alone against the rest of these harlots.
I was partial to light skin Nobel Prize winning Barbie. I liked that she
light skin Barbie.
I liked that she didn't remember that she'd written a book, which and then she was like, "Well, yeah, I did write a book," which is probably pretty similar to how most people who sell these like books that sell 500 copies and get pulped. That's probably how their experience is like.
I wish I had a better answer to that than just standard Barbie, but I think I got to stick with Margot.
It's true. She's a vision. Remember Proust Barbie? That did not sell well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Again, yeah. Q, who's that joke for? I mean, I guess. I mean, I shouldn't complain. I mean, if they're trying to hand out jokes to like every standard deviation of the IQ spectrum or something, okay. But
Yeah, granted, what would you say? I mean, obviously this isn't going to happen, but what if we took these references and we put them to Greta Gerwig and we're like, who is this for? And she's like, this is for the right wing podcasters who came to my movie ironically and thought there wasn't going to be anything for them.
well, there we go. Yeah.
I have to say, well played, Greta. Well played. But here's okay. So I guess if we're wrapping up, I want to go back to my sort of theory, which is that like the movie, the Barbies are like not supposed to be, but the Barbies represent like men in kind of the original state of gender relations, and the Kens are the women, because you do see that that there's this. I guess we'll call it like patriarchal world where the men control everything and the women have no agency, and then the kind of the standard tale is that the women are dissatisfied. You read like The Feminine Mistake, they called it like the problem that has no name, and you could say that Barbie is the one who. But Barbie isn't really dissatisfied. She's fine with the way things are, right? Like she doesn't. When Weird Barbie gives her the choice to change things, she's fine. It's Ken is the one who's dissatisfied, right? Ken's the one who wants things to change, and in that sense, Ken is like the Betty Friedan, the woman in this analogy, right? So he's really the one who wants things to change. And then throughout the movie, you see like the Kens are the ones who change, who like make this radical gender change, and the Barbies are the ones who kind of stop this. They're the ones who have like a reactionary view of gender relations. Like Barbie wants things to go back to the way that things were. There's actually, I thought about it, there was an amendment to the Constitution that was supposed to like be a radical gender revision. It was the Equal Rights Amendment, and it just like the Ken's amendment, it failed. Like the feminists failed in that way, and the patriarchy won that battle. And at the end of the movie, Ken is encouraged to like be his own man, but really that's like the woman being encouraged to like be her own woman. Stop obsessing over your boyfriend. Get your own identity. You are Ken off girl or whatever. Whereas Barbie, is encouraged to, I guess, not, you don't need a woman. You're also fine the way you are. So in that sense, I thought it was interesting that, because it is true, there is no world where women control everything, but there is a world where, at least like within the cosmology of like the liberal gender relations, there is a world where men controlled everything, and men were the one who changed it for women. Just like at the end of the movie, that the Barbies say, yeah, we'll throw the cans a bone or whatever. Does that make sense?
It does, but the only thing I struggle with this read, at least, I think it works as like a way of exploring the movie, but then you would have to say that like, because the Kens, representing women, dissatisfied women in this reading, like overreach, and like the reactionary forces win, and like that we think would not be Gerwig's perspective, right? Or that would be a real like normie based take, to be like, all right, we've gone a little far with the women's lib stuff, but like let's.
Yeah, I mean, it's not what they think, but I don't know, isn't it what we think?
Oh sure.
Yeah, no, I'm just like, it's interesting how like they, maybe unintentionally it does show, this is how we win. Just act like the Barbies, because it's true. Like, who is it? Like, honestly, like of the two genders, like, we talk about like women manipulating men, but really, isn't it like ultimately aren't men the one who men are the ones who manipulate women? Like, that's why women always complain about their boyfriends who they like love until suddenly they don't like him anymore, and then he was always a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, if you have any sort of riz, I guess it's obvious that women are much easier to control than men. So in that sense, like the scene where the Barbies are like controlling the men and making them do what they want, like kind of obvious, like the reason that you don't see the Barbies dissatisfied in that scene is because, doing the Barbies as men, like men are not dissatisfied in the normal,
right? Because it's like
normal domesticity.
The charismatic atmosphere of men is capable of reorienting the women, where the opposite is not true. But like,
yes,
I guess even if what you're saying is true, like the problem now is that there's too many single people, so whatever sort of social or political influence that is real and exists in the real world, like it's not they say now like the biggest political predictor is like marriage. Married women go
Mhm.
Republican, single women don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
I don't know if you guys saw that tweet, which was I think just someone posting a TikTok, but the girl's like, I broke up with some guy. I liked him a lot, but I told him I didn't see it going anywhere, and he's just like, okay. And she's mad because she's like, I can be manipulated. He should have manipulated me into staying with him, but he didn't.
My mom said that when she was like, like, why did my dad give me or my parents got divorced? And I remember my mom telling me once, she kind of overshares sometimes. She was like, why did your dad give me the divorce? And I was like, Mom, you're insane. And I was right.
um, Degree Studies brought up earlier. Oh, wait. There's one more like thing that's kind of the text of the movie that I wanted to bring up. The America Ferrera's big speech, which I'm seeing like people sharing it online as this watershed moment for women in media. I thought it was very embarrassing. She basically just outlines all the sort of contradictory expectations that every member of a society has.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you
It's just like, we're
don't need a
yeah.
lot of empathy to realize that all age groups, all positions in society, all genders are facing expectations that undermine one another, and that trying to fulfill all those various expectations at once. Like, I would even cede to women that sort of like the whore Madonna complex that they face, which I think is really what that. And this is again another thing where you sort of like cry for Zoomer culture, where they're like, no one's ever put it like this before, and it's like, no, the whore Madonna complex, which is what she's describing, like the simultaneous desire of men to have like a trad wife and a fun slutty girl, is like the most famous concept in feminism. So like, if you've never heard it explicated before, then like you're not interested. But I do think most even thoughtful feminists, and like I said, just even empathetic people, would admit like, oh, there's the exact same difficult binary of expectations for men to navigate, which is like, you have to be tough and strong and a solid provider, but also vulnerable and emotionally available when in the moments where that is what a woman wants most from you. And like, I think I don't know, it's always felt to me like most mature people are like, yeah, relationships are sufficiently complex that you have to try and be different things for different people at different moments, and just like yelling at your partner that they should want one or the other is not a particularly productive or fair thing to do, even while, we all suffer under the weight of those contradictory expectations. But it's definitely a human universal. And so like, it's disappointing to see people connect with it and sort of connect with it under the assumption that that is something that is unique to being a woman in the world.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what the kind of point of my reading is that like, when you, without being somebody who I guess rejects the kind of inherent duality of the sex binary and the way that it, we express our gender through, yeah, we are all humans. Like, the plight of women and the plight of men is actually not that different. We just happen to have kind of unisexualized it, and then also like essentialize it in a binary in like the exact opposite way that we should, right? Like, the things that we should see as commonalities we view as particulars, and the things that we should view as particulars we view as commonalities. So like, if you could come out of this movie kind of being properly empathetic, it would be nice. But like you said, it feels like people are being socialized to hold on to dissatisfactions that are inherent, that are ultimately unproductive.
Yeah, to see like the plight of women as being as uniquely tough. I mean, it is uniquely tough in that it's not the plight of men, but they're both they're both full of contradictions.
Yeah, it's a unique plight without being uniquely tough in how tough it is. Like, everybody's got struggles. Like, literally one of the first things I was ever taught was life isn't fair. But I feel like you have to be a certain age to really understand, or at least have had a certain number of experiences to understand what it really means for life to not be fair. And I feel like a lot of people just never get
there.
If
anything, if I can go MGTOW for a moment here, like, I do think that there is more space. Like the movie sort of adopts the assumption that to say, for a woman to say what America Ferrera says in her speech is verboten, and that like women are not allowed to talk about the struggle of living up to these contradictory expectations. And certainly that is not my experience. It's all,
The movie made $1 billion,
yeah, and it's
so
all
like,
any woman has ever talked to me about. Whereas like I
Yeah.
think the sort of unique struggle that men face now is that like culture and women will tell you you will lose nothing by letting go of conventional masculinity and just being more like a woman. Like if you're just nurturing, if you're just caring, if you're just emotionally available, if anything, will be more attracted to you. And as all men find out one way or another, that is incorrect. It's
Yeah.
either like a, I don't think it's a purposeful lie. It's like, it's the same way like Steve Jobs said, like you can't ask the consumers what they want in a product because like they'll give you an incomplete, or I guess the original quote is Henry Ford saying like if you ask the public they'll just say they want a faster horse. Like it's that type of thing where like you can't actually survey women about what they want because what they actually want is much more contradictory and sort of existing on a razor's edge than
They want to not have to express what they want, but still get it.
Sure, that's another way of saying. So like I think like if I was in a civic minded mood, I would say like yes, we are both operating under the weight of these contradictory expectations that are hard to live up to, and we should both be uh you know generous with one another.
Charitable, yeah.
But if they wanted to really have a fight about it and like be sort of rude about it, I would say like no, it actually is a little bit more difficult because like I think like the two axes of the feminine character that America Ferrera is talking about, the difficulty of reconciling, I actually think they are both sort of generally respected in culture. So that even if you identify with one of the poles far more than another, you will get like some, if you want to be a mom and stay at home, there's like voices in culture that will tell you that's good. If you want to be a girl boss, there's certainly voices in culture that will tell you that that's good. I don't think people will say like Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson or whatever, but like I don't think there are actually that many powerful voices in culture being like, no, it's okay to be a conventionally masculine man.
If you just want to, no one's telling you it's okay to just be a gamer.
Sure, sure.
but like I think it is true. Like I don't know. Like if there is something to like the masculine and the feminine, like I don't really need like everybody in the world to affirm me. What she's basically complaining about is that, like it's impossible to please everybody. But I mean, like isn't that what Honest Abe said? Right? You can't please everybody all the time. Like I've always taken those words to heart. Like I really, even on like Twitter or whatever, like I hate when people are complaining. I just hate complaining. Which is ironically something I'm complaining about. It's like as long as I have sort of an internal locus of control where I'm satisfied with what I think is right. It's okay if I have to put up with some feminine nattering. I guess like the movie says that's the reverse is not true for women, but it's okay. I'll let them have that one.
The last thing I'll say on her rant is that virtually everything she's talking about is expectations that women put on themselves or each other, and it's like almost none of it is like from men or even from like legal structures or anything. It's just women putting these things on each other.
Well, yeah, I actually think there's a lot of value in the fact that women are more, let's say, like community standing conscious than men. Like there's a reason evolutionarily, and some of us might say religiously, why women are like that, and it's important to play that role. But that does create a certain imbalance here because it's like, if I do think it's true in general terms that like if a man knows he's in good standing with his wife and with his like very very close community, that is enough for him. Whereas I do think women like to be in like a positive stasis both with their partner and where they and their partner stand in the broader community. And so that that reality of them sort of caring about the broader social consensus can probably make navigating expectations of womanhood more complex than expectations of man, because like
For
we're
sure. Like
we're
there's that.
trying to please fewer people basically.
Yeah, like there's that famous diary entry of Lindbergh's wife in the 30s where she's writing. She's like, I support Charles, but I really hate how everybody hates us, and it worries me. And Lindbergh was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say what I want to say. Like not that I even necessarily endorse the flying ace himself, but yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure you endorse everything Charles Lindbergh was into.
I do think America first, but anyway, yeah, that's a good I think about that a lot because it's true. She, one could blame her and be like, hey, who gives a hell what they think? But for whatever reason, evolutionarily, culturally, or even just her particular personality, like that's how she felt about things. And I think that is, there are valid, like you said, there are valid reasons why that happens. But that is a duality that is another contradiction we have to face. And
Yeah, they do care, and there's not much you can do about it. I think degree studies. I'm going to move on, but the next thing. But I think degree studies brought up "Don't Worry, Darling." I don't know if you guys have seen that, but yeah, I did see a lot of parallels with that movie, especially where it's like they present this idealized world, and then don't really make a compelling case as to why any of the participants should leave it.
I was in the room when my then girlfriend was watching it. I wasn't really paying attention. It was election night, the midterms actually, so I was on Twitter. And when it was done, she was like, "It was okay." She was like, "The movie was obviously about like right wing Twitter," is what she said. So I guess I assumed that it was intentionally supposed to kind of be a reaction to neo masculine Jordan Peterson type rhetoric. I mean, I don't
the Chris Pine character is based on Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm,
yeah. I can't believe you guys didn't make it. That she was watching "Don't Worry, Darling" and you were on right wing Twitter.
All right. Anything else you guys want to bring up? I think I've exhausted my thoughts.
Not that I can think of, I guess.
Yeah, I'm at the end of my rope, but I feel like Golden Boy. I feel like we didn't integrate you enough. Is there anything else like macro you wanted to put in here?
No, you guys had a great discussion about the lecture. I honestly, when she was saying that stuff, my eyes just rolled to the back of my head. I don't think I intook any of it, so it was hard for me to comment. But yeah,
were any of the women you saw the movie with like particularly connected with that moment, or you're not sure?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's almost like a selfish way to just like, oh, I see myself in this. Like, yeah, it is hard to be a mom and also, be sexy or whatever, and like the dual nature of expectations. And so in a selfish way, that's presented to them, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so true." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." Like,
I was going to ask if any of them said "so true."
Just me. But yeah, I don't know. The women reaction to this movie is just it is interesting. A lot of people just like the movie's so incoherent. We've said that a lot, but it's like everybody I know like picked up a different thing from it. So it's just kind of throwing stuff at the wall. But.
And maybe that's a good like ending point, which is. What's it? Michael Knowles says, let me pull it up. His little thread ends with TLDR. Greta Gerwig is a serious, sophisticated, marvelous filmmaker. And I guess you could maybe make a case that like in the incoherence, she's like, look, I'm going to serve something for everyone. If you're, 110 IQ, you're not even going to notice that there's actually nothing being said here. If you're any smarter, you're going to be a little tripped up, but that's okay. Like it's going to be, funny and pretty or whatever. So maybe she is a genius in that she's just like, I'm making the ultimate discourse movie with the maximum meme potential and all that.
Yeah. Well, actually, one last note that I wanted to say was I wrote this down, or actually I made a point of putting this in my notes app, like during the movie with my brightness turned all the way down. After she gets broken out of her brainwashing the president Barbie, she's like, one moment I was president and then I was cutting a Ken steak. And it's like there's not a single woman alive who can relate to that, but like that literally like describes like men. Like I used to control the entire world, and now I'm, following this woman around to brunch. Like the female version of like, you have wine bar with girl, you are gay or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, the
Yeah.
only women
So
who
true.
can relate to that are French, I think, because during Me Too, like there were all these French actresses who were like, I don't know, I play like Margaret Thatcher on the stage, and then I go home and blow my husband. Like these are the dualities of femininity. Like I like them. So maybe it's something so contradictory only the French can hold it in their big cheese eating heads. But I think when you're on your notes app in the future, if anybody gives you guff, just tell them it's for a podcast.
I was hoping you were going to say brightness maxed out brightness, Giga Chad picture.
Next time, I'll have to say that for next time. For the Alamo Draft House.
Okay, let's wrap it up there. Thanks a ton for joining, guys. If you made it this far, go subscribe, go watch all my not watch, but listen to all my other podcasts on YouTube and Apple and Spotify and all that stuff. And definitely when you listen to this, retweet it and all that stuff. Follow everyone here. I'll put links in the description. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Grant.